to Sagas and Sass Season 4, brought to you by Geek Saga Entertainment. I'm Tara, along with fellow host Jonathan and practically permanent guest host Seth. This episode will cover Thorns, part 1 of Morningstar, which is the third installment in Pierce Brown's Red Rising saga.
Please note that if you are watching this as a webcast, there is a chance you will hear some spoilers for other books in the Red Rising series during our live webcasts. However, if you are listening to this as a podcast, any spoilery bits have been edited out. If you're watching live, join us in the chat, or after the fact, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube at Sagas and Sass, or email us at sagasandsass@gmail.com to continue the conversation. Additionally, please note that the views expressed in this show are those of the hosts as individuals and do not necessarily represent the show as a whole.
I always forget where I come back in now. And don't forget that we now have a Patreon, which I actually will be making some slight edits to probably very soon, so keep a weather eye out. But currently we have 10 tiers ranging from $1 a month to $40 a month, and it offers tons of ways to support us and receive some great perks in return. You can find it at patreon.com/geeksaga_entertainment. This is it, by the way. The final book in the OG Red Rising trilogy, and here we are with chapters 1 through 4.
Golden Sun ended with one hell of a betrayal and more than a few deaths, not to mention wondering what the heck was going to happen to Darrow, incapacitated and captured by the Jackal, who it turns out was in league with the Sovereign. And listen, Morningstar might open with Darrow thinking he's not alone like the Jackal says, and that he is not the Jackal's victim. He's the Reaper, after all, so the Jackal can do his worst. But Darrow knows suffering, knows the darkness, and knows that this is not how it ends for him. He was tortured, and then he was put in a dark box, and he doesn't know how much time has passed. The Jackal has offered him an out, that if Darrow admits he is broken, he will be released, but at the expense of his family's lives, as the Jackal claims to have them in prison as well.
So Darrow considers this, but then decides to kill himself instead, and is about to do so when the ceiling of his box opens. The floor rises up, and he realizes that all of this time he has been locked inside the Jackal's dining room table. And now the Jackal is showing him off to his dinner guests, because of course he is. This dude. Those guests happen to include Cassius and Aja, who have apparently arrived to finally collect Darrow at his dissection, something that should have happened a long time ago, but apparently the Jackal wanted more playtime with Darrow, which the Sovereign allowed. Though now it seems the tensions between Camp Sovereign and Camp Jackal are even bigger than before due to the Jackal kind of sucking at running Mars. After listening to them bicker and to the Jackal somehow be even creepier and more awful than usual, Darrow is taken to be cleaned up and examined before his big trip, but his appointment is interrupted when two Grey sons of Ares show up to rescue him.
The Greys, siblings named Holiday and Trig, have quite a bit of convincing to do, as poor Darrow can't help but think the whole situation is just another of the Jackal's fucked up games. In the end, Trig has to use the phone a friend lifeline, and it's Severo in the Ares helmet because he's alive and kicking and did in fact organize this rescue. Darrow might finally believe in the rescue, but physically he's a wreck, and Holiday and Trig can't exactly carry him. So here's where a little cocktail named Snakebite comes in. It packs quite the punch, so even though it doesn't fix atrophied muscles or any of the other numerous things wrong with him, Darrow is at least able to walk on his own. But there's yet another surprise in store. Vixis, yeah, that Vixis, asshole from the Institute and the Triumph, joins them in the elevator and mentions another prisoner. And who is it? It's none other than Victra, which of course means Darrow and Co. have another stop to make before they can leave Casa Jackal. They make Vixis take them to Victra's cell and find her scarred and paralyzed, but still full of fight. Holiday has to stun her, and she will have to be carried out. Oh, and even though they originally planned to leave Vixis alive, he mouths off about killing Fitchner and Severo being next, so Darrow slashes his throat, and yeah, good riddance. Unfortunately, it's right then that the alarm sirens finally begin to wail. Oh man, this book, like, as rough as the end of book 2 was, Morningstar has one hell of a rough start.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole first chapter is almost entirely Darrow being in his own head and It's a bad place for him to be right now.
Yeah. Hey, thinking about this, when you edit the podcast, you might want to put a content warning up at the beginning because we are talking about Darrow doing some stuff.
Yeah, I usually put it in the description.
Oh, in the description. There we go. Never mind. Yeah, I just there are a lot of things that make me slightly angry about the end of book 2 into the beginning of book 1. Specifically, I think we're going to talk about this later, how exactly the Sons of Ares got betrayed in the first place. But and it's angry in the sense of not just, ooh, this makes me angry because I hate all these bad people. This makes me angry because it seems like you were stretching something to cover a plot point. But anyway, but yes, yeah, I just like, I mean, anytime your protagonist is in this kind of situation, it's not great. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're, Corwin in the prison cells below Amber. That's mostly for you, Jonathan.
Theon in the Bolton dungeons.
Theon in the Bolton dungeons.
Kirk
Frodo trying to get
in
those
lots of hurt comfort stories of fandom back in the 80s.
Yeah, this is always a bad time, right? This is your hero at their lowest ebb, and if you're going to be really true to what's happening right now, there are going to be a lot of bad thoughts going through this person's mind, and that always makes for a rough read.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, and there's some asides where Darrow is thinking about the things he's been doing to keep himself from really just losing it all. The thing that drives me crazy a little bit is he thinks about reciting all these works in like 5 different languages and stuff like that. And it's like, I mean, that's cool for you, Daryl, but most people don't have that sort of just recall or knowledge period. Don't have that knowledge period, let alone recall of it all. So I'm glad that you had this to keep you from just going completely off the deep end in the box all this time. But
Are you telling me, Tara, that if we were stuck in a box for a year, would not be able to recite the entire Song of Ice and Fire in our heads?
I mean, have you memorized the entire Song of Ice and Fire?
Look, I don't know.
At times, I feel like I've
you.
certainly done a lot, memorized a lot of it, but then I realize when I reread it how much I've forgotten.
I realize how much I forgot every time I go to the trivia contest at Ice and Fire Con. I'm like, they're like, there was one word on page 36 of Feast for Crows, and I'm like,
oh, it's not that bad.
It's close. But I was just going to say, look, if Darrow were a Heinlein character, he could just play chess in his mind.
Yeah.
The shot at Heinlein. No, there's just a scene where there are these two dudes who just met each other but managed to have a chess game in the dark without a board and pieces. And I'm like, Bob, no, that's not okay. All right, whatever.
Well, there are actually people who can do that.
Yes, but the chances of two of them just meeting at random.
Okay, well, that's
yeah.
Well, I think that to me, the saddest part is when he reaches the point where he's thinking about the veil and he has stopped believing in it. He's saying, the veil is not real. It's a lie told by mothers and fathers to give their starving children a reason for the horror. There is no reason. Io is gone. She never watched me fight for her dream. She did not care what fate I made at the Institute or if I loved Mustang because the day she died, she became nothing. There is nothing but this world. It is our beginning and our end, our one chance of joy before the dark. And I for anybody who was raised in religion and has lost that faith, I feel you, man.
Well, as someone who never had that faith and sort of thinks that's what actually is there, that part of it didn't actually impact me the same way.
It's rough reading it from his perspective, knowing that
Yes.
he has lost something.
Well, and also like his thought that, you
Yeah.
know, Io didn't actually care, doesn't actually care, doesn't know, wouldn't know what's going on. I've done like, because he's done everything he's done because of her, for her, and now he's gotten to the point where she doesn't know anyway. That's the part of it it's while I wanted to touch on the loss of the faith in the veil and the afterlife, that's the saddest part of it is that his loss of faith in those things makes him realize that Io, once she was gone, and he's done
Yeah.
all these things for nothing, basically, in his
Well,
mind. And that's it's not obviously that's
I
not the case, but he
yeah.
is so deep in his depths. He is at his nadir that he can't see beyond, like, well, if Io would have no idea, if Io's not in the veil watching over me, watching down on me, I don't know where the
Yeah.
veil would be located
I
in
mean,
the
Looking up.
universe, but
I mean, I know he was in a dark place, but I viewed it as he's given up,
yeah.
and
Well,
and feeling he, yeah. But what I don't quite get of that feeling is when I think about someone who's passed away, and you're trying to honor them by doing something that they would have appreciated, they would have liked. You're doing that for yourself, and you're doing it in their honor, for
Yeah.
yourself and for whoever else it may help, not so much for them.
I don't know that it's actually fair to ascribe that thought process to him at this point. I'm not sure he
Yeah.
can think that way right now
No,
in the book.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but it's also, just like, I mean, he's had a bad year. He's had a
I
bad year.
mean, he's been hearing the thing that kills me is, like, he's been hearing these sounds, right? Like, I don't remember exactly how he describes them, but he eventually, when he realizes where he was being kept, he thinks, like, this, like, clinking that I heard was them literally and the murmurs, that was them eating dinner above me, like, their knives and forks against the plates and stuff, and it's like, wow, like, now I know that Darrow is crammed in this box, but A, how big is this table? B, because these are the first people, as far as we know, other than his little close circle, like Lilith and Antonia, who the Jackal has revealed the fact that he's kept Darrow in his freaking table for all these months. Like, wow, dude, you were literally only doing this for your own sick. Like, I mean, I know, obviously, we all know the Jackal is a fucking mess, but like knowing that you're eating just like inches above the person that you're torturing. Ugh.
All right, so do we imagine that the big reveal at the Jackal's party or whatever, to introduce it, he just looks at somebody's like, well, what did you invite us? What did you invite us here for? And he goes, that's a rather tender subject. And then Darrow comes out.
Well, I assume it was more like, "Where is Darrow? We demand to see him at this point." Was what was going on, because again, the conflict between the Sovereign's people who wanted Darrow for medical experiments, and the Jackal, whose sole interest was just to torture him.
Yeah, yeah. The two genders. Anyway.
Dissection and torture.
I mean, are you better off,
Yeah.
with being a victim of Mengele or a victim of?
Yes, exactly.
Ugh.
But it's, yeah, I mean, I have a question. I guess I'm getting slightly ahead, but I mean, still in the same chapter block. Do you really think that if Darrow had accepted the Jackal's offer, that the Jackal really would have let him go?
No.
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 I mean, and in the end, it's, the offer being, I will release you, I will give you a life of luxury, But I'm also going to kill your entire family, who I totally have, by the way.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, Darrow isn't in a mindset to think maybe the jackal is lying and doesn't have my family, obviously. But, yeah, no, absolutely not. The
Yeah.
whole thing is always just it's one torture after another. And obviously the offer itself, the jackal knew the offer itself would be torture to Darrow, because Darrow has the capacity for relationships and love that he doesn't have, and that's part of the reason he hates him. He hates Darrow so much.
Yeah. Yeah. I just am like, I mean, yeah. It's just the thing that I was thinking about the offer for a second. I'm like, assuming Darrow takes it, which he wouldn't unless he were far more broken than he is right now. Like, even if Darrow took it, I'm like, so let me get this straight, dude. This dude started a rebellion because his wife died. You think he's gonna let this whole family thing go?
Yeah.
Like, that's...
Well, and I also think, like you say, that Darrow wouldn't take it unless he's a lot more broken than he already is. And I think I want to go back to that, just because I don't believe he ever would have taken it, because that's the thing. In the beginning of this book, when he realizes because he does actually consider it for a
Yeah.
minute, because he also believes that the jackal is torturing his family. So he's thinking, I'll get them released from their torture, I'll get me released from my torture. But then he has this moment where he's like, oh, wait, fuck no. Like, I'm not giving up my family. And instead, starts bashing his head against the side of his torture chamber coffin thing hard enough to die,
Yeah.
because he realizes that he has gotten to the point, like, I'm even considering this now. I would rather die than
Yeah.
go farther. So I actually don't think he ever would have gotten to a point where he was broken enough to do that, because he was literally
Right.
willing to do this to stop himself from making that decision.
Yeah.
Now, ugh, so, Cassius has to identify him, and that's a real interesting thing, because as much as I'm about Cassius and how hoity-toity and everything that he is, when he throws his cloak over Darrow, we know that Cassius and Golds especially, this wasn't about, like, oh my god, he's naked. You know what I mean? This
Yeah.
wasn't about like this wasn't a modesty thing. This was like, Cassius didn't want to see it. Obviously that was part of it, but I don't think him not want it's not like his sensibilities are super high or whatever. This is a dude who's murdered people, etc. He doesn't want to see it, because he does actually have that pity for what they have done to Darrow and what Darrow has become. And I
Yeah.
just wanted to note that, because I think that it's the one moment in a long while where I've actually been like, all right. Once in a while, I guess Cassius can do like a not horrible thing in this trilogy,
Once in a while.
Yeah, yeah. Meanwhile, Lilith is over there slurping hummingbird eggs, which soft boiled hummingbird eggs. Like, hummingbird eggs are like at a half an inch at most. How hard is it? Like, how hard is it to properly soft boil a hummingbird egg? And also just, ugh. I heard an interview with Piercer. He was like, I wanted to show how gross she was, or that these are my words. I'm very
Yeah.
much paraphrasing what he said, but he wanted to show how gross she was by having her eat something just so utterly ridiculous. Like something that only the richest of rich golds even would be eating, because soft boiled hummingbird eggs.
Well, I mean that
He could have had her eat an ortolan.
I was gonna say the same thing.
Yeah.
She should have been eating ortolan.
Yeah. Which, folks, if you're not familiar, that's when you take a songbird that never did anybody any harm, cram it full of cheese, bake it, and then eat it in one bite.
Mmm.
Bones
Tasty.
and all.
Bones and all.
No, the bones maybe not so much.
Also,
But
you put a
I
towel over your
understand
head
you're
to hide
supposed
your
to like
shame
do
from
it
God.
in the dark, right? Aren't you supposed to do
Yeah.
it like in the dark?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, is that to hide your shame, or is that because you're heightening your senses? Because, like, if I'm going to eat this awfully terrible thing, I should have the most joy and experience out of it possible.
Supposedly it was to hide your shame from God, because somehow
Yeah,
that
I
was
don't
going
quite
to
understand
prevent
why
it.
eating an ortolan is any worse than eating any other animal, personally. But
I don't know. It's
I like meat, so I'm good
I,
with it.
I think it's because it's like, hey, here's this thing with no meat on it. I am going to eat it just to show that I can eat it. And it's like, that's a,
But isn't it supposed to be a delicacy?
yeah, I mean, it's supposed to be a delicacy.
I mean, I haven't tried it, so I'm
I
not
mean,
going to say
caviar
it's
is
not.
also supposed to be a delicacy, but I've tried it and it just tastes like salt.
What?
Yeah, caviar,
me-
salt and fish. And
Yeah.
I've had some really expensive caviar, and to me it always just tastes like fishy, salty.
Yes, and
Oh, and the texture. Ugh.
I agree with you, Tara, and I also have people I know who absolutely love it.
Honestly, I think people who say they love caviar are lying. They're like, they just don't want to seem like they're not cultured enough to love caviar. Okay. Anyway, so it's time for Darrow to be sent to Luna, but so they send him to the doctor. They clean him up a bit, and then they send him to a yellow to be examined to make sure he's healthy enough for the trip. And shockingly, he somehow is. Um, Although the doctor keeps referring to Darrow as it, and Darrow actually kind of gets a little bit angry about that. He's like, it. And the doctor's like, kind of just turns away from him, continues his conversation, and emphasizes calling Darrow an it again. And then, like, right after this happens, this is one of my favorite moments in the series because I both love the Nakamuras and both of them, even though we obviously don't know Trig for very long, as we'll learn very, very
Yeah.
soon. But I love the Nakamuras, and I just like the doctor's talking shit, and they just bust in and gun down the Greys and the doctor too, and it's like, ha, fuck you, you racist piece of shit. Like
Yeah.
you and BT Dubs, like you are also like you're the where are yellows? They're kind of in they're either a very low high color,
Mid-color.
or yeah, I think they're a mid color. They're so they're better than red. So this doctor, he's basically like a poor white person from the dirty South talking shit about a black person who is no worse than they are, just because like of the color of their skin. You know what I mean? Like the racism in these books is, in my mind, or in my opinion, actually, the racism in these books, in my opinion, is very colored, ha ha ha, by that sect of society, of our actual society.
I mean, yeah. Or I mean, you could apartheid South Africa.
Oh, like
Yeah.
I mean, so
I'm
many.
sorry, South Africa. Okay, good.
But the Nakamura twins bust in, and as we mentioned in the summary, they have to convince Darrow of who they are. But this at the beginning, before they even call Severo, I believe. Hopefully, I've got this timing right. It could be after, actually, but part of them convincing Darrow is Trig insists on stopping and taking the moments, even though Holiday says they don't have the time to give Darrow his razor. And as soon as Darrow sees it, he knows it's his razor, the one Mustang gave him that he lost twice already, once to Carnus and then again to the Jackal at the Triumph. And he's kind of frightened to hold it again, but then he does, and it was just kind of a plain, simple razor the last time he saw it. But now, I love this passage so much. I'm going to try not to be too emotional about it. It ripples now with images etched into the white metal. Io looks back at me, an image of her etched into the metal. The artist caught her not on the scaffold, not in the moment that forever defines her to others, but intimately, as the girl I loved. She's crouched, hair messy about her shoulders, picking a hibiscus from the ground, looking up, just about to smile. And above Io is my father kissing my mother at the door of our home. And toward the tip of the blade, Leanna, Lauren, and I chasing Kieran down a tunnel, wearing Oktobernacht masks. It is my childhood. Whoever made this art knows me. The golds carved their deeds into their swords, Holiday tells him. The grand, violent shit they've done. But Ares thought you'd prefer to see the people you love. Now, granted, he still is going to go kill a bunch of people with this razor after the fact. It's still a weapon, but I do love that dichotomy of the golds carving their brash deeds into their razors, but Severo knew that Darrow would prefer to see the people he fights for.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's not much else to say about that.
Severo is weirdly sweet
Mm-hmm.
about stuff a lot of the time.
He's very sentimental.
Yeah.
Very extremely, even when he's being kind of crass and shit, he's always been very sentimental. And we learn a lot more, or we see a lot more of that side of him in this book.
Yeah.
For
less
sure.
Unicorn porn.
Yeah,
More
less unicorn
sentimental
porn,
stuff.
more sentiment.
Yeah.
So they get on an elevator and like just fucking Vixus. Though, hey, at least him being the asshole that he is allowed for Darrow to find out that Victor was alive and also a prisoner and then rescue her. So I just it's so fucking creepy when Vixus asks Holiday and Trig who they have, and they tell him it's an obsidian because, like, obviously Darrow's too tall to be anything else, but they can't exactly say it's Darrow. And when Vixus asks if it's a howler, they're like, "Ooh, can't tell him that either because he's gonna want to do something with him himself." But he is like, "Oh, well, we'll just put him in the cell with the Julie bitch, and they can fight over dinner." And Darrow is immediately like, "Kill kill." What does he say? He says something to Trig like kill the cam or something like that, like basically saying like don't make sure nobody's watching. And it's just like, oh no, because if you've never read this series before, you obviously think that Victra is dead at this point, right? She got shot in the back, I think, like the upper part of her spine 2 times, and was like crawling toward Darrow saying like I wasn't part of this the last time he saw her, and we never heard anything else about her.
It was only a flesh wound.
Okay.
Oh, it was more than that because she's straight up paralyzed. But
yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. We assume that it's also sort of. I don't know. This is not really a spoiler. It's sort of a pity that I guess we don't get Lauren back. Like if Victor could survive getting shot, but it's also like. My favorite thing about that is like the only way you could beat him is by treachery. Well done. You've proved that you were more treacherous than the finest razor master who ever lived.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And at some point, I believe actually it might have been during their conversation over Darrow in the when has risen up out of the table. I want to say Lilith makes some snarky comment about Lorne, and Aja even. And listen, Aja is not a nice person, but she even is like the fuck, like side-eyeing Lilith because she knows like there was as much as Aja is not a good person, she has her own twisted sense of honor, and she's just looking at Lilith like, bitch, don't you even.
Didn't she say keep his name out of your mouth and slap? No, that's something else.
I wish, honestly. I wish she'd slap those hummingbird eggs right out of Lilith's mouth.
Yeah. Well, Lilith
So
could use a few things. Yeah.
so
Hold on to that
go
thought
ahead.
for the next 4 months,
Oh,
folks.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, seriously. So Victor's torture, very interesting that it is the opposite of Darrow's, especially at first glance. It's it's almost like what I kind of imagine is that maybe it's Pierce showing us the difference between. Hold on, my dogs might start. Yes, of course they are. I'm gonna give this a second. Somebody's dropping off a package or something, so they might bark, and I don't
Yeah.
want to. Barking dogs, y'all. This is like going live. It's super fun. Oh, and our light isn't on. Here he comes up the porch. Come on, dude. Just drop the package. Get out of here. Dean is yelling at them from the living room, and I'm just in here like, I can't yell. Um. So yeah, I hope that, or I don't know. I hope, believe. I don't know what it is. I want to think that Victor's torture being kind of the opposite of Darrow's, the bright light, the loud noise, the whip and burn scars on her back have are sort of like Pierce trying to show us the difference between the way the jackal tortures and the way Antonia tortures. Like Antonia's is all loud, overwhelm the senses, and the jackal's is make him feel alone, like in the dark, apart from everybody, because that's how the jackal feels all the time.
Well,
Well, okay, taking a step back though, the jackal didn't always torture that way. Isn't he the one who tortured Antonia in the institute?
Oh, he's tortured tons of people.
yeah.
But there's a difference between
I mean,
and I think that with Antonia, him and his people put her on
they
a
crucified her.
yeah, they crucified her. But I don't think you can compare what is done to a stranger who you have no attachment to at the institute to what the jackal wanted to do to Darrow, because Darrow was basically usurping him as his father's son, you know?
Yeah, I know. I just also have a bit of a like. Well, he crucified me, but Darrow is a red. You know, it's like it.
Yeah, I never quite understood the Antonia partnership.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think most people do. But despite the fact that she's then tortured and she's paralyzed, she still has a fuck ton of fight in her because, she be Victra. And she really does fight back hard when she thinks that Darrow is like a trick. She's screaming like, take off your face, because she thinks that it's a flesh mask or whatever, which is sad. But also the fact that she still has that fight in her. I don't know if it's because if it's the difference between Victra and Darrow, or if it's the difference in the torture, but obviously Darrow wasn't like he wasn't attacking Holiday and Trig. Granted, he didn't know them, but he wasn't like, this is a fake rescue, like clawing their faces off or whatever. He was just scared, whereas Victra is obviously going to be scared, but it's the fight or flight or hide reaction. Like, I think Darrow wanted to fold into himself, whereas Victra is like, fuck you, I'm gonna kill you. Which, oh, Victra. But they have to like stun her to get her out of there. A lot. By the way, it takes a lot to stun her. And they told Vixus they were going to leave him alive, but
They lied.
well, like, did they though? Because like they were going to leave him alive, and they did, but they didn't. Like, I guess there were caveats to that. Like, we'll leave you alive unless you mouth off about killing Fitchner and Severo being next, and then Darrow is just 10,000% done with you.
But that wasn't part of the deal. They didn't mention that in advance.
Well, I know, but I like golds like to get away with seeing how far they could push people, and sometimes it backfires.
Well, I mean, in this case especially,
Hmm.
Darrow specifically says he wants pity. My pity was lost in the darkness. The heroes of Red songs have mercy, honor. They let men live as I let the jackal live, so they can remain untarnished by sin. Let the villain be the evil one. Let him wear black and try to stab me as I turn my back, so I can wheel about and kill him, giving satisfaction without guilt. But this is no song, this is war.
I would like to add, as a footnote to that, yes, this has taken some social engineering because, as we all remember, the Reds are Irish, and being an expert on Irish folk music, there's not a whole lot about mercy.
Yeah, well, and also to combine this is not a song, this is no song, this is war with life is not a song, sweetling.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Victra may be in hand, but stopping to save her, which of course they had to do. I don't care what Holiday and Trig say, particularly Holiday, delays them enough to end up in quite the pickle. And on that note, we move on to chapters 5 through 8.
Which I just accidentally moved past. So, hold on. Unfortunately, Darrow and company have more to worry about than just alarms. Their elevator is being redirected, and they can't override the controls. This means it's time for Plan C, also known as escalation, which basically means Holiday and Trig have to prepare for just about anything while they wait for and it turns out they really did plan for just about everything they could, including bringing a private EMP to incapacitate the enemies, weapons, and ancient weapons of their own that aren't affected by the EMP, because of course there's always an EMP. Laugh out loud, please. Thank you. They make it to a landing pad, and Holiday announces that they only have to wait it out for 3 more minutes. But then Darrow notes that the snow has stopped falling and looks up to see that a defensive shield has been activated around the Jackal's fortress. Holiday still insists the rescuers will come, even after Aja shows up and takes down Trig. There is no time for mourning, but Darrow can't understand how their rescuers will get the shields. Holiday gestures towards the edge of the landing pad and tells him to listen, but before we know it, what he's listening for, Cassius arrives to taunt them, and all Darrow knows is that he will not let them take him and Victra again.
Thankfully, Cassius, being the big blowhard that he is, even after Darrow drags the badly injured Holiday and paralyzed Victra from their hiding place to stand at the edge of the pad, a whole ass conversation happens. At the end of which, Darrow tells Cassius to listen to the wind, even though he knows his enemies won't understand what they're hearing, because a son and daughter of gold would never recognize the sound of a claw drill gnawing through rock, or guess that Darrow's people wouldn't come from the sky, but from the heart of their planet. So, with Holiday and Victra in hand, Darrow flings himself into the open air and falls and loses his grip on Victra. And the ground is rushing up, and then boom, 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 literally a whole chorus of sonic booms. The air is filled with howling armored figures, and Ragnar catches Darrow and Holiday. Severo has hold of Victra, and in the midst of battle, Darrow briefly loses consciousness. He wakes on a ship surrounded by dying men, but almost immediately blacks out again. The next time he wakes, it's to the sound of his uncle Neryl's voice. Neryl, who is definitely not dead, just like Darrow's mother Deanna assumed. Oh, and Deanna is there as well, and soon Dancer arrives, and even though Darrow is worried about having been tracked about Severo and Ragnar and Victra, his family, both blood and found, reassures him at every turn.
But he has one more question that needs answering. How the heck the Jackal knew who and what he was? Darrow is worried that it was him, that he screwed up and left clues for the Jackal to pick apart, but it turns out that Harmony gave him up first. That said, Darrow showing up and being present during Mickey and Evie's rescue cemented everything. So, good job there, Darrow. And then the Golds held a VPE, that's very public execution, that was also a trap for the Sons who tried to rescue Darrow before he could be killed. lost thousands of people, and in the end thought they lost Darrow as well because the person they did kill looked just like him. Not to mention the fact that they executed the fake Darrow as a gold, not as a red, just another gold who thought he could be king. So, one heck of a warning. And everyone but Severo thought Darrow was dead until some of Theodora's informants caught wind of the fact that some Olympic knights were headed out to escort a package from Attica to Luna. Quick aside, yes, that Theodora. She's with the Rising now. Everybody snaps for Theodora. Yes, good. Good. All right. So the rescue was planned and executed, though not without quite a few hitches, and here Darrow is. But when Dancer immediately starts talking about next steps, Darrow stops him because he just wants some time with his family. And so he gets just that, including meeting his nieces and nephews, seeing Eo's sister Dio, and sitting with Kieran and Neril for a while, even reassuring them that he has a plan. And even though they all know that's a lie, it's one they all have to tell themselves, at least for now.
Man. So, just real quick, R.I.P. Trig. We barely knew thee.
Yes. Pour
Trig
one
was
out.
great. Like,
Pour one
honestly,
out for my gray homies.
Seriously, like, Trig was great. I love both of them, right? But Trig definitely had like he had an ability for human connection, I think, that I'm not sure Holiday has at quite that level or even close to it. Not saying anything bad about her, but he knew when Darrow needed the razor, right? He knew what Darrow needed to hear. Whereas Holiday was like, nope, this is a job, get the job done. Darrow's our mission, blah, blah, blah. To the point where, obviously she's upset about losing her brother, but Darrow wants to rescue him, and she's like, no, you are the mission. You have to stay alive. Trig told you have to stay alive. I'm telling you have to stay alive. Stay alive. Trig is gonna die. It's whatever. Like, I'm upset about it, but 13th Legion, man.
Yeah, I mean, Pierce Brown has this really interesting way of writing characters who die that you wish you got to spend more time with, and sometimes that can be really annoying. And sometimes, like here, it's just like, that I like that. Oh, okay.
Well, this is also a really this isn't like Leah or Quinn even, who you wanted to know more about them, but you got book, like with Quinn, a book and a little more. With Leah, most of the first or 2/3 of the first book. Like,
Yeah.
this, you get a few chapters, but
Oh,
I think that the fact that you only get a few chapters, but it's still sad when he dies, is a big
yeah. I mean, I was actually thinking about EO. Like, I'm like, yeah, well, I could have spent more time with EO, but it's he's also a very he's very murderous as an author. He's very, very prone to kill people. Again, put a pin in that for 4 months from now, kids. Just trust me on this. But yeah, now I think I can now talk about the part where Harmony sold them out.
Yes.
Yeah.
You don't buy that?
I don't. And I don't buy it for two reasons. One, Harmony hates golds. Hates them. So much hates them. Does she hate Dancer and Darrow more? Really? Also,
Well, it wasn't just hating Darrow and Dancer more, wasn't it also saving her own skin?
Yes. And I honestly think that she believes that saving her own skin is the best for, making open war, like going after gold, whatever. It's like part of her doesn't care about, she's not a Slytherin, right?
yeah.
Part of her doesn't care about living necessarily, but she also, her whole life has been about revenge, and she's so that need for revenge, which we'll talk a little bit about when we talk about the third section of chapters in this episode. But that need for revenge can so totally blind you against so many things, right? And and that's just in real life. But we're talking about a world where she believes that Darrow's a sellout, that Dancer's not doing enough, and I think she believes if I can save, and let's be real, she's also being tortured before she
Yeah,
gets him
I
up
know.
too. So there's a torture aspect to it before she gives it up. But I do believe that a part of that is they're torturing me, they're going to kill me but I need to live because who else is going to do the job?
Yeah. I mean, okay, there's that, but there's the one other big question I had about this, because I read this. I read the book in early September, so it's been a few months. Like, did she know enough about Fitchner to be able to give him up?
I don't think she gave him up.
Somebody did.
Yeah,
No,
no, Fitchner gave himself up, man.
Fitcher gave himself up.
When he
Okay.
saved Darrow from
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, that's right. Okay.
So yeah. And
Well,
and
okay,
and
sorry.
and Harmony, well, that's the other thing. Harmony and Mickey and Evie weren't even captured by the Jackal until after the Iron Rain. So
Right, but yeah, okay. I mean, I guess I just still had a problem with them being able to. I mean, I don't know. They've got the state surveillance apparatus, so I guess it's not a big deal. But them being able to put hands on Fitchner that quickly and easily just seemed a little. But anyway,
yeah,
anyway,
no, he gave himself up.
yeah.
But I mean that said, yeah, I really do think that Harmony's drive for revenge against Gold has just completely blinded her to anything other than getting it done, and she stopped believing that the Sons, as they were run by, you know, Fitchner, Dancer, and Darrow period, would get that done. So she saves her own skin so that she can be the one to get it done.
Kids, for
It's stupid, but
yeah, yeah. For bonus points, if anybody wants to write an essay comparing what just happened here to the break between the real IRA and the provisional IRA, you could send that in to me.
Ah.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just thought, like, and I don't want to get ahead of myself. It just seems like there are definitely times in the books where a lot of stuff goes exactly right without a hitch for the bad guys. Whereas it almost never goes exactly right without a hitch for the good guys. Almost never. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying there's some stuff that I'm like, wow, that went really smoothly and according to plan, didn't it? Huh? Weird how that
Well,
happened for
I
you.
mean, have you read A Song of Ice and Fire?
Well, no, that's because
it didn't go so well for the bad guys in that either.
yeah, it's like look, A Song of Ice and Fire isn't really going well for anybody. Because it's like because good old chaos is a ladder. Even if he doesn't meet the end that he met in the show, and I kind of hope that he does, is gonna be real surprised when the whites jam a spear up his ass after he sat it on the Iron Throne. You know what I mean? Like, it's
Yeah.
not going well. Even if the bad guys in Westeros succeed, they're hosed.
But no, I don't want to get into the book. I was about to now debate Ice and Fire, but we're not going to do that.
No, yeah, no. Okay,
let's get back to this. I actually don't think everything was going wrong in general over the course of these 3 books for the good guys. I actually thought they had a lot of successes.
Oh, they did.
I don't think that everything went wrong for them, but they had stuff planned out really well. And even so, when it came time to put those plans into action, something happened that was bad, and then they had to improvise or work their way through it. Whereas for the bad guys, it seems like they put a plan into action, and bam, that we're good to go on
I,
that.
I don't think that, well, I don't think we actually have the bad guys' plans. We don't have a point of view character of the bad guys in this series.
We
So
don't. But
so we're assuming it went according to their plan, but for all we know, they're as scrambling as much as anyone else.
it would help me to see that, is all I'm saying. We'll talk about some. I keep saying 4 months from now, but no, there's some stuff I've got issues with. Tara, you're on mute.
I was trying to erase a comment, and it kept like I don't know. It was kept
Okay.
making like weird noises. My computer kept giving me that dink dink. I don't want to do this noise. So even here though, like we've got Cassius over here just believing that they've won. He thinks they've thwarted Darrow's escape. He tells him to accept his fate, calls him a terrorist, and you've given up any rights you might have had. And Darrow's just like, the fuck, man? Like, what rights? I watched my father die. I had to pull my wife's feet. He says what gives you the right to take them, but he means gold in general.
Yeah.
And Cassius just keeps throwing that terrorist word around, which, certain people who have no right to throw that word around love throwing around. I'm not saying terrorists don't exist, but just saying in this case.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he, Cassius is all, honor still matters. Honor is what echoes. Because he's trying so hard to be his father's son, but this war has taken everything from him. As we learned at the end of book 2, he actually believes that Darrow either killed or had his whole family killed. Don't say anything. I'm just saying this. I'm going to repeat that. At the end of Golden Sun, we learned that he believes either Darrow killed his family or had his whole family killed, kind of same either way. He believes Darrow's at fault for that. And in this moment, even though Darrow recognizes that Cassius has had all these things taken from him, that Cassius believes that Darrow was a part of taking everything for him, was a part of taking everything from him. Darrow thinks that if Cassius could, he would choose to be back by the campfire they made in the highlands of the Institute. He would return to the days of glory when life was simple, when friends seemed true. But wishing for the past doesn't clean the blood from either of our hands. And I'm like, really, Darrow? In this moment, I don't know that Cassius is specifically wishing to be like chilling by a fire with you at the Institute. Kind of too much has happened.
I mean, no, but I get the idea that he's like wishing for the days when it was all us fighting to survive against everyone else, and I was looking for who killed my brother, and they were bad, and that was it. And now honor has survived with all of these, because clearly the Jackal is an honorable man.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Cassius. Ugh, anyway. So, holy shit, though. That last second rescue. Darrow just flings himself off this landing pad. Now, he has heard the sounds. He knows what's happening, but he doesn't have the timing correct. Holiday's severely injured. Victra, PTFO, and also paralyzed. So Darrow's kind of the only one that's like, well, I gotta make a choice here. Gonna just jump off this landing pad and hope, I guess. And I don't know, Seth, do you want to read this passage, or do you have the document open?
Yeah.
This is a great passage.
This is amidst the rising sons of Ares, a crimson armored man with the spiked helmet of his father zips forward and catches Victra seconds before she impacts on the roof of a skyscraper. The howling of wolves babbles from his helmet's speakers. It's Ares himself. My best friend in all the worlds has not forgotten me. He has come with his legion of empire breakers and terrorists and renegades, the Howlers. A dozen metal men and women with black wolf cloaks kicking in the wind fly behind him, the largest of them in pure white armor with blue handprints covering the chest and arms. His black cloak is stained with a red stripe down the middle. For a moment, I think it's Pax come back from the dead for me. But when the man catches me in Holiday, I see the glyphs drawn in the blue paint of the handprints, glyphs from the South Pole of Mars. It is Ragnar Valeris, Prince of the Valkyrie Spires. He tosses Holiday to another howler and pushes me behind him so I can wrap my arms around his neck, dodging my fingers into the rivets of his armor. Then he banks through the smoking valley toward the tunnel, shouting to me, "Hold fast, little brother." I don't know how you would Ragnar
I tried
Valeris
to do it
stop.
in the last episode. Yeah. Yeah, it's very hard.
It's like it's either that or
You assume he has a deep voice? Maybe he sounds like
You're the only one that assumes he doesn't. Jonathan will forever argue that, like, if they ever have a Red Rising movie or TV show, Ragnar's gonna have like a
squeaky, high-pitched voice.
No, I believe that's already been taken care of in this genre by Bremer Den Gorst from Joe Abercrombie's really, really nihilistic fantasy books, which are good reads, but really, really nihilistic.
So I love that rescue, man. The Darrow's like, oh, the timing. They're about to, the ground is pushing him fast, and then he hears like the boom, 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 like I said in the summary, where it's just the sonic booms of them. I don't know why there were sonic booms. Honestly, was it their ghost cloaks disappearing? It seems a little bit unnecessary
Well, they
because
were
they're,
coming in faster than the speed of sound.
I guess, from the ground somehow. Whatever. Okay, I'll
Well, they
give
were
you.
coming through a gigantic tunnel at 3,000 miles an hour with. Yeah,
I don't know how
it's
fast
unlikely.
they're grab. Yeah, but whatever. It was a beautiful picture in my head, so I'll give you that, Pierce. But yeah, Ragnar grabbing Darrow from the air and Severo grabbing Victra, and obviously they're not safe right away. There's still like a firefight happening and people are being shot. And at what the reason Darrow loses consciousness the first time is because somebody gets a son gets torn apart in front of him and the helmet like flies at his face and knocks him out. Is the way I read it anyway. Um and then he wakes up very briefly and he realizes he's on a ship and he sees a red next to him who is dying. You know, he's severely injured. He's dying. And the red kind of like reaches for him and says his name. And when he says my name, I'm assuming it's like Reaper, not Darrow, obviously. And then Darrow just loses consciousness again. And the next thing he knows, he's kind of having a dream. He is hearing Uncle Neryl's voice reading a poem and thinks that he is in the Vale. Then he's like, wait, because because he is hearing Neryl's voice. And even though his mom was like, I don't think he's really dead, I don't think Darrow's in the mind space to really recall that. All he recalls is that Neryl is kind of supposed to be dead. And the poem that Neryl is reading, I think Neryl calls it some Ponzi shit. Because it's like, I don't even know. I don't know what poem it is. I'd have to look it up. Like I'd have to open the book and read it to remember what poem it is. But I don't remember what poem it is, but it's like some, it's historical, like non-read shit. And Neryl is like, I don't know why I'm reading this Ponzi shit. And I think Deanna says like, well, Dancer said it was his favorite, because that's the thing. Like, Darrow has read and seen and heard so many things now that he's not relegated to just the read songs and poems and whatever they were allowed. He knows so much more.
It's I just looked it up, and apparently it's a bit from Antigone.
Yeah, I knew it was something Greek.
Yeah.
But either way, Ponzi shit. Per Uncle Neryl.
I mean, I don't know. I think Uncle Nero never got to the end of Oedipus the King.
I'm guessing not. I'm kind
Yeah.
of surprised, like, the Reds are allowed to read, honestly. I guess that's slightly
Yeah.
yeah. Um, but he wakes up and Neryl is there. He's alive. His mother is there as well, despite, the jackal claiming that he captured and tortured her. Of course, we learn very briefly earlier that, Darrow's like, they have my family in the call that they made to Severance. I was like, no, 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 don't worry about that. Your family's fine. I saved them already. So he sees his mom and she's older even than the last time he saw her. And yet he says he thinks her broken body is not what she is on the inside. There she stands, tall as any gold, broad as any obsidian. And yet Darrow, broken AF as he is, all he wants to do is protect her and heal her and give her all the things she never had. He loves her so much. She's his mama. And he doesn't know what to say. And he finally speaks, and they all realize he's awake. And Neryl stops, and his mother approaches him, and his hand is almost larger than her head. That's a big thing. Like, we all knew Reds were small, and I know that there's been passages where it was mentioned that Daryl, wow, I did it again. Darrow. Every time
Yeah.
Neryl and Darrow are in the same
Oh, well, it's,
conversation.
Daryl and his other brother, Daryl. Anyway,
Oh god. Um, Even though we know that Darrow was pretty tall for a Red, like, wow, his gold hand is almost as large as her entire head. That's a lot.
his hands, his special hands.
But
Yeah. Well, I mean, okay, hang on though. Like, there are basketball players who can palm a basketball, right? We've
Many
got
of
that.
them.
So it's not out of the question to think that somebody who is in the 6'10" to 7'2"
true.
range might be able to cover a small person's head with their hand.
Easily.
Yeah.
If you've ever been to not Disney World, but oh god, Universal Studios, there's an NBA restaurant. They have the handprint of players, and they are almost alien in how long their fingers are.
Mm.
So it would not be difficult at all for someone that size.
I guess I never really thought of it that way, but I guess, yeah, you're right. Just seemed weird to me. Like, my hand is like almost as big as her head.
No, it's definitely a weird sensation, I would think. But it's a thing.
Well, probably maybe more a weird sensation for somebody who was small and is now tall.
Yes.
So one of the things that really stuck out to me about the whole conversation here is Deanna, his mom, kind of breaks down because she feels so bad that she gave up on him. She thought he was dead. And he's like, it's not your fault. You couldn't have known. But she admits that Severo knew he wasn't gone. And Dancer explains, he never stopped looking for you. I thought he was mad. He said you weren't dead, that he could feel it, that he would know. I even asked him to give up the helm to someone else. He was too reckless searching for you. And listen, I know Darrow's talking a little bit of shit here, and some of it is deserved, which we will not get into quite so much in this episode, but we will in future episodes. But I don't know, man. They're not blood brothers. They're not twins. But that idea of having a friend that loves you so much that they insist they would know that you are gone is just like,
Yeah.
gotta
Well,
give some Severo love, man.
it's also like Darrow's at this point in Severo's life, like Darrow was Severo's first friend. And for a while, Darrow was Severo's only friend. He had the Howlers, but I don't know that back in the day you could have called them friends. They have sort of become so as things for a period of time got less intense. But like back in the Institute, allies,
Well,
followers, but friends might be a little bit.
yeah, and there's also, depending on where we are in the story, different versions of the Howlers, right? I
Yeah.
mean, there's the original Howlers, and they've been picking up Howlers along the way ever since that we
Picking up, losing, picking up some
Yeah.
more.
yeah, exactly. None of which we have ever really met, other than the original ones, but there clearly are more of them.
Yeah.
So that's more like unit camaraderie than true, you know,
Yeah,
societal
I mean,
friendship.
I for sure think that Severo feels has a friendship, good relationships, etc., with the other Howlers, particularly the ones who are still around, which we'll talk about in a bit, like Clown and Pebble. But like Seth said, Darrow was Severo's first true friend, and yeah, I just so moving on a little bit.
Yeah.
Darrow finally gets to see his nieces and nephews, including his brother Kieran's first child with Dio, which, by the way, when Dio walks in the room, Darrow does like a double take because he's like, whoa, Dio. And he's like, oh, no, wait, you're just Dio. It doesn't help that their names are so close.
Yeah.
And Dio is like, hold this baby. And Darrow's like, oh, no, this is so weird, which I completely identify with. Like, I know Darrow is just like, no, I'm Darrow, and I don't even know. He's in pain and he's like all overwhelmed and everything, but also I identify with the awkward, like, do I really want to hold this baby? Not really. Okay, you're giving me the baby. Oh, it's cute, cute, cute. But the baby is delighted with him, unaware of, in his a mind, in his own opinion, what a monster he is. Jonathan, you want to read this quote?
If I go back to it, yes.
You skipped ahead. How dare you? I'm
I
trying to
was
give you all equal. I'm just gonna officially assign quotes and future documents so that I'm not
So we
reading
know
all
where
of
to
them.
stop.
Yeah, that's the problem, right? Now I'm lost. Hold on.
It's okay. It's okay. It's page the very bottom of page
11.
11.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Her world is alien to the horrors I know. All the child sees is love. Her skin is pale and soft against mine. She's made of clouds and I of stone. Her eyes large and bright like her mother's. Her demeanor and thin lips like Kieran's. Were this another life, she might have been my child with Io. My wife would have laughed to think it would be my brother and her sister together in the end, and not us. We were a little storm that couldn't last, but maybe Dio and Kieran will.
Hmm, it's just very sweet. Darrow getting to meet his little niece is so sweet. And I'm pretty sure we know who this niece is, but that won't come up for two more books or another book. So we're gonna keep our mouths shut on that. But so, and obviously after this, Darrow has the conversation with Kieran and um oh my god, who else is there? Is it just Kieran and his mother? Maybe whatever. Darrow has the conversation with his family, particularly with Kieran. They're kind of talking about like, we have it good up here, but it's not good for everybody. And they're looking to him for leadership, and he is just like, Jesus, I can't give them what they want, but he lies and says that he can, and they know he's lying and he knows he's lying, but they're all just going to accept it because they want to have their happy evening together, right? However, now that Darrow knows some of what's going on, it's time for him to face the more difficult things in chapters 9 through 12. The morning after Darrow's family time, Severo and Ragnar come a calling, loudly and roughly, with Severo wrapping Darrow in a bone crushing hug after greeting one of Darrow's nieces, because it's clear that the whole fam is, well, besties with Darrow's besties. Seriously, the kids are asking for presents and using Ragnar as a jungle gym, and it's kind of the cutest. Although, when Darrow notices Severo's eyes, things take a bit of a weird turn. Because Severo has red eyes now, y'all. And yes, that's red with a capital R. And they aren't just any red eyes, they're Darrow's. And yeah, Ragnar is right when he says it's odd that Severo had Darrow's former eyes implanted in him. But this is Severo we're talking about, so maybe not all that odd. Anyway, now it's time for them to take Darrow for a walk, during which he learns that thanks to Mickey, Ragnar has fancy new teeth and knows how to read. And that thanks to Fitchner, they have this place called Tinos. And from the inverted stalactite that they are currently occupying, Darrow looks down and sees a sprawling refugee camp packed full of clans from the mines that the Jackal has been purging. Problem is, as much as the Sons want to fight against the Jackal's attempts at genocide, they don't have enough space, food, or meds for everyone. The refugees even rioted at one point, though Ragnar descended to put a stop to that, apparently in a firm but nice enough way to earn himself the nickname the Shield of Tinnos.
And as if the conversation wasn't dark enough already, it comes to a close with Severo revealing that Cassius was the person who killed Fitchner, because of course he was. Yeah, Cassius. Okay. So now that Darrow is briefed on all of that, it's time for him to get caught up on all the war news, including that Mustang is alive and has made common cause with the Moon Lords in their new rebellion against Luna. Private side note, it is, of course, funny that the Moon Lords are rebelling against the moon. But anyway, moving on.
Different moons.
Different moons. It's granted. Their rebellion is due to a combination of their own general hatred of the sovereign, disdain for the core and its people, and the fact that the arch-governor of Io and his 9-year-old granddaughter were killed at the Triumph slaughter. But to Darrow, that's neither here nor there, because again, Mustang is alive, and it also means that the Rising isn't the sovereign's only enemy. Unfortunately, Roke al butt-sucking Fabii, Severo's words, but we are here for them, stole a moonbreaker, and has been keeping the Moon Lords tied up with, space battles and stuff. The too long didn't read is that the Rising is running out of time. The Reds from the mines aren't warriors, the Jackal's media is blaming every civilian death on the Suns, and Harmony is leading her own Red Legion around, massacring every high color they can. It's open rebellion, nay, open war. But Darrow, for one, is confused as to how it happened. And well, it's more like Severo happened to release the recording of Darrow's carving to, like the entire universe. Darrow feels used, but apparently all Severo cares about is that now Darrow, who, very obviously isn't dead, isn't a martyr, but a messiah.
This leaves Darrow in a pretty dark place because he's still of a mind that the Rising can't go toe to toe with gold. Even after he hears that Ragnar has sent envoys to the ice to tell the Obsidians bondage and that they will soon be freed, he's too wrapped up in his own thoughts, worrying about all that should have and what ifs. So Ragnar calls him out and then takes him on a little field trip to the hospital. Once there, Darrow ends up spending quite a bit of time talking, joking, and laughing with the injured Reds, and then he's finally ready to go back and face his allies. Some demands of his own, including that they send an emissary to Mustang and bring Mickey back to Tinos to make Darrow into a weapon again. Oh, and there's one last thing. He wants to visit Victra, but obviously he's not asking for permission to just say hello. He finds her bound to a hospital bed. When he offers her an explanation, she scoffs because she doesn't care, never would have cared about what he was, and in return he admits he should have trusted her and says he will give her whatever she wants, including allowing her to leave Tinos. But what he really wants is for her to join the Rising, to join the Sons of Ares. She wants revenge because, Victra gonna be Victra, and even though he reminds her that revenge is best served cold, he still promises to get her carved back into shape as well. Well, he actually doesn't say it's a dish best served cold. He says it will end hollowly. And then they shake it on it and yell, yeah, Victra's truly officially part of Darrow's team now.
So, just want to go back real quick to Ragnar and the kids is like the fucking most adorable. The children cluster joyously around Ragnar so he can barely walk. And then later, like a page later, Darrow notes that one of them is like climbing up his leg and they're asking if he's brought presents and he's got ribbons braided in his hair, which are clearly from them. And it's just like, I love it. I am
It's
so
very
here for everything Ragnar being
It's very pure. It's very
It's very
pure.
pure, and this is something that comes up several times in this book, but the Shield of Tinos, whatever. The Shield of Tinos thing is very much like Ragnar. He always wanted to be a protector, and he was made to be a murderer. And it's just, I don't want to get too much into that, but I love it. I love him with the kids. I mean, and Severo also, he runs in, he scoops up one of the kids. He's like tussling with her, throws her to the side when he realizes, like when he sees Darrow and like goes to hug him. But he's already saying he brought them candy or whatever. It's very cute. The whole thing is very cute. I love that Darrow's fam is besties with his besties. Like, end of story. We'll never get over that. Now, so this next passage, who wants to read Darrow and who wants to read Severo? I'll read.
Hey,
I'll read.
someone's got to read Ragnar.
So okay, Seth, you read Severo. I'll read the
Okay.
Darrow parts. Hopefully, we can figure this out. He leans in close.
Do you like him?
Buried in that squinting, sharp-angled face, his eyes are no longer that dirty shade of gold, but are now as red as Martian soil. He pulls back his lid so I can better see. They're not contacts, and the right is no longer bionic. Bloody damn! Did you get carved?
By the best in the business. Do you like him?
They're bloody damn marvelous. Fit you like a glove. He punches his hands together.
Glad you said that, because they're yours.
I blanch. What?
They're yours.
My what?
Your eyes.
My eyes.
Did yon friendly giant drop you on your head in the rescue? Mickey had your eyes in a cryo box at his joint in Yorkton, a creepy place, by the by, when we raided it for supplies to bring back to Tinos to help the rising. I figured you weren't using them, so I asked.
He shrugs awkwardly.
So I asked if he'd put them in. Bring us closer together, something to remember you by. That's not so weird, right?
I told him it was odd, Ragnar says. I love that passage. Everything about it. It is fucking weird. Like,
well, as we all know from earlier, Severo is obsessed with eyes.
mm-hmm. Yes. I don't remember which episode that was. Part 2 or 3 of Golden Sun, I believe, when Mustang brings back Pliny's eye that she plucked from his face, and Severo's like, "Can I have it, please?"
Yeah.
I don't think he was always obsessed with eyes. I think it was only when the jackal took his eye at the Institute that he became obsessed with them, which honestly, good reasoning, I guess.
It's just, it's woo.
I mean, Severo does ask if Darrow wants them back.
Yeah.
And he's like, but it's like, do you want them back? Like, he clearly doesn't want to give them back. And Darrow's like, no, I just forgot how crazy you were. I love it.
Yeah.
So then they go for a walk.
This is as weird an obsession of body parts as I saw since Rocket and the wanting the leg in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Rocket wants a lot of things, by the way. So yes, you're right. Rocket is kind of actually, that's a good comparison. Rocket and Severo. Think about it.
I thought about doing something close to that dialect.
Now, they go for their little walk. Side LOL. At one point in their walk, they're trucking along. Severo's pushing Darrow's wheelchair. I don't remember what he's talking about, but he says something just kind of over the top, and Darrow hears like a thump and a bump, and he stops rolling for a second, and then he rolls again. He looks back, and Ragnar's the one pushing them, and Severo is like, "Stop throwing me," and it kind of, that wording makes it sound like this is something that has happened before. Because in this instance, he's only thrown once. So when Severo says, "Stop throwing me," I'm like, his specific wording is more like, "I'm a terrorist warlord, stop throwing me." But he's asking Ragnar to stop doing something that's happened before.
Or it could be, nobody tosses a dwarf.
or he's just feeling embarrassed.
Yeah, any one of those. Maybe all
I
three.
think it's happened before, but I also, though, the Lord of the Rings reference, that would be very Pierce. We've already heard Osgiliath, so I'm kind of surprised that it wasn't worded closer to that. Now
Yeah.
that I think about
Well,
it.
I mean, it's possible. It's a bit of a stretch, but not too far, I think.
So they very first go to visit some howlers. They see Clown and Pebble. And, Darrow's like, I'm sorry that I lied to you. And Clown's like, about that. And Pebble's like, stop it, you asshole. And it's not what she actually says. She's like, nope, nope. But I do love that Clown and Pebble apparently did not bat an eye when Severo told them Darrow was a red. And they immediately went along with him to extract Darrow's family. Like,
Well, yeah.
It's not, but the thing is, like, because there are howlers like Thistle who straight up noped out on them, the fact that they didn't just kind of say, okay, fine, we're howlers, let's go. They were like, okay, let's do it.
Well,
And
Clown and Pebble are two of the OGs, aren't they?
yes. Yeah, but so is Thistle.
Well, and
it's but they always said that Thistle had a stick up her ass.
Yeah.
Well,
of being gold.
They didn't always say that.
Yeah, they pretty much did from the get-go.
They said that at the end, like Severo said that once very briefly in Golden Sun. So like it's and even when Darrow gave the razor to Ragnar after they landed in the Iron Rain, Thistle, yes, was the only one that was nasty about it, but the others were also like, Darrow, what are you doing? They weren't against it the way Thistle was, but that doesn't mean they agreed with it. So at some point
I like to think, because I like to think that even I mean, clearly among the golds there are people who can be taught, but it's like if I were them, I would think back to the Institute and think about how Darrow treated people once he really started taking charge.
Right, but that's exactly what he lectured it to them too.
Yeah, this is treating people with dignity and like, hey, maybe and they're like, oh, all right, Also, sort of the lesson that he has, that a lot of gold is refusing and will continue to refuse to learn, is that anybody, apparently, well, not anybody, because Darrow's a special red and he's got his hands, but if given the right opportunity, it doesn't matter where you were born, he's better than most golds. Mm-hmm. And he's only been a gold for like 3 years.
I think it's been a little bit longer than that. Yeah, I know, like 4 or 5. But yeah. They didn't have to go along blindly, Yeah. But the fact, like the wording, they didn't bat an eye. They're just like, whatever, sure. Now let's go rescue his family. Like, now.
Can I
go ahead.
Take a step forward in this magnificent secret base that they have that, well, in the future we'll probably learn a little bit more about it, but just how something like this would get built without people noticing is a bit of a stretch to me.
I don't know that it's so I think the way they describe it away is very basic, in that Fitchner hit it with things. Like I'll be honest, I can't remember the weird Red Rising technology names that are used, but it wasn't just the formations already existed. Fitchner used technology to hide it. And you got to remember, the Sons of Ares have a lot of money. We don't know how they have a lot of money. Don't say anything. But they have a lot of money, and it's kind of like the Jackal owning a whole bunch of the media, right? Like Fitchner owned a whole bunch of technology that allowed him to hide the location of this place. Like the stalactite already existed. The underground caves already existed. It's like going to like Luray Caverns or Mammoth Cave in Kentucky, right? But it being a billion times bigger because Mars is also a crap ton bigger than Earth. So like picture
No, it's not.
no, Mars is
not? I thought it was bigger.
Mars is smaller than Earth.
Is that really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was bigger. Well,
However, it is an entire planet.
Yes.
They're big.
So we're just
planets are big.
assuming. So we're just going to assume that Mars has this
Well, and also
unbelievably large cave formation, bigger than any we've
Mars
ever
didn't
found on Earth.
originally have like bodies of water. So whatever they've done to it to create those bodies of water, they're not going to cover it with X% of ocean like Earth is covered with, right? So I don't know, whatever. There's a whole lot of land they have to work with. There's underground shit they have to work with. And in the end, the formations already existed, and all Fitchner had to do was hide them. So it's like shields and misdirection, as they say in Kuroko no Basket. It's a basketball anime. Listen.
I was like, all right, yes. I'm like, hey, a basketball anime.
You'd think that would be something I would read, and I have yet no interest whatsoever.
What, in Kuroko no Basket? It's a good manga.
Well, being that I'm a basketball fanatic and I like...
It's on Netflix. The anime is on Netflix. You should watch it. It's really good.
Oh. Huh.
It's really good.
All right.
Anyway, random aside. So speaking of Tinos, I love the sort of Star Wars reference when Severo calls it a wretched hive of angst and peasantry. Oh, Severo.
I missed that.
Well, because he couldn't call it scum and villainy because, like, the poor people that are there are refugees and not there by choice, and they might not be the best people in some instances.
No,
but,
I get that. No, that I get. I just missed that reference when I read it.
Oh, yeah, it's a good one. So Titos is stuffed full of people, and things aren't going too hot. There's not, like we said, there's not enough food or meds. The people rioted when rations were cut, and Ragnar had to go down to stop the riot. And they tell Darrow they have to keep the lights bright even at night. And Darrow notes that Severo looks tired because he knows how to fight, but this is a totally different type of fight. And Darrow looks down at the city, and he can't really find the words that he needs to say. So he is thinking about the people that are living down there and is thinking, I feel like a prisoner who spent his whole life digging through the well. Wow. I feel like a prisoner who spent his whole life digging through the wall only to break through and find he's dug into another cell. Except there will always be another cell and another and another. These people are not living. They're all just trying to postpone the end. And he knows this isn't what EO wanted, but dreaming is easy, war is not. And next up, he goes to a meeting, and Dancer and Severo are kind of at each other's throats. Which is like, we learn more about why we will learn more about why in our next episode. But for now, Ragnar notes that the Reds are not warriors. They can do all these other things. They can fly ships, shoot guns, lay bombs, fight Greys. But if a gold shows up, they're just like, bye forever. So it's just very clear that the Sons of Ares are guerrilla fighters and saboteurs and spies. But Darrow thinks about Lorne's words. How do sheep kill a lion? By drowning him in blood. Anyway, Long story short, Darrow's confused as to how they ended up in this open war because the Jackal did not publicize killing Fitchner and would have wanted it quiet as he purged the Suns. And they have this whole did you tell him? Why didn't you tell him? He wanted a night with his family. First of all, why is it Dancer's job to tell Darrow what Severo did?
Because somebody already talked about the eyes and is feeling self-conscious.
I mean, I think Severo just knows what he did was wrong, and he doesn't want to admit it.
Yeah, I mean...
I don't think so.
Look...
And maybe he doesn't know it's wrong, but he knows it's going to... Okay, here's the thing. He doesn't think it's wrong. He does know it's going to upset Darrow.
Yeah, I mean, he does know it's going to upset Darrow. But I gotta... I hate to keep hitting this button so hard, but since Pierce served it up to me... By the way, folks, if you don't know, I don't know whether I mentioned this. I have a master's in Irish studies and have in fact read a ton of Irish history. And he's not my favorite person, but old Patrick Pierce had a quote: "The fools, the fools, the fools, they have left us our Fenian dead," right? There's nothing they like more than a martyr. That was actually one of the smarter things that Severo did.
Well, I was going to say, I think it was absolutely the way to go. Darrow was probably dead. Yes, Severo was a believer that he wasn't, but statistically, that was a fool's errand to just assume that. And that was a card he had to play to get the Reds to help to rebel. And I think being that they were totally SOL with very few allies and, a little bit more resources than we.
Yeah, it was one of the few.
It was a card to play, and he played it, and I think he played it at the right time, considering.
Yeah. I mean, I don't completely disagree, but I do think he didn't want to be the one to have to tell Darrow about it because he.
Oh no, I definitely agree about that. Like how. I mean, even in that quote that you have there where he's like, "I made you a myth." How hard is it to go up to your best friend and be like, "So I did something while we all thought you might have been dead."
Well, I mean, Seth, you've already read Severo once. You want to read that quote?
I will read that quote. The Golds thought they could kill you off, that they could beat you and make your death mean nothing. I'll be damned if I'd let that happen. Damned if I'd let you disappear facelessly into the machine like my mother. There's not a red on Mars doesn't know your name, Reap. Not a single person in the digital world who doesn't know that a red rose to become Prince of the Golds to conquer Mars. I made you a myth.
Yeah.
And now that you're back from the dead, you're not just a martyr. You're the bloody damn Messiah the Reds have been waiting for their entire lives.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And they rolled the rock away.
Here?
What, Jonathan?
Jesus allegory here?
Yeah, I mean, he is.
Oh, yeah.
Well, they rolled the table away. And
yeah, Jesus. I mean, it was kind of like a stone table, I'm pretty sure. Oh, gosh.
The deeper magic from before the dawn of time.
So, yeah, no, I mean...
Oh, I'm off to go write a Darrow Christ Superstar parody.
Yes!
Oh
my God.
Okay, there is your show when you start Red Rising Con.
I've been wanting to do that for a billion friggin' years, and I've just been waiting for the money to do it. Like, I need a backer and more free time.
When I win the lottery.
Yeah. So, Ragnar and Darrow, after this nonsense, Darrow's like, I gotta get out of here, man. I gotta get out of here. Ragnar and Darrow have a moment about Ragnar missing home and his sister, and Ragnar tells him that he sent friends to the spires in the ice to spread Darrow's words. To spread Darrow's word that their gods are false, they're in bondage, but soon they will be freed, and that they will know Eo's song. And Darrow, he kind of doesn't believe in Eo's song anymore, and he tells Ragnar he doesn't feel her anymore. He knows that everybody, like these low colors, think that Darrow is their link to their Persephone. to Io, but he lost her in the darkness. And while he used to think that she was watching me and used to talk to her, now she's a stranger. And he believes that if he hadn't been so proud, he would have seen the signs and Fitchner and Lorne would still be alive. But like we said in the summary, this is a lot of couldas and shouldas and wouldas and what ifs. And this is when Ragnar accuses, like straight up accuses Darrow of being afraid of the people he's trying to help. And so he takes Darrow to the hospital to visit some of the patients. And this is like the depth of Ragnar's character and knowledge is so there. I mean, obviously, I think we all loved him, like from book 2, right? Did we all love him? Can anybody say I didn't like Ragnar?
No, I mean,
He's
again,
great.
he's a darker character, and I jokingly referred to him as this, but he is kind of Tupac Too Furious.
Yeah.
He's there for us to latch on to that
Well,
type of character again.
right. But unlike Pax, who was a gold,
Yeah.
he is also a low color. And I don't know. He takes Darrow to this hospital, and Darrow, like, he's visiting with some of the patients, and Darrow starts a conversation with one of them. I think his name is Vano, and it kind of is awkward at first, and then they start joking and laughing. The Red that he's talking to says where he worked in the mines was basically the person who was like, I think Darrow says your chaff was like it was either dropping down on me or flying up at me. And the Red, I'm pretty sure his name is Vano, is like, yeah, well, you hell divers, all the same. Y'all think you're the shit, basically. And the fact that this Red is okay with joking with him makes Darrow feel so much at ease. And then they start really joking. Like, I think one of them asks, like, so do you got a red dick or a gold dick? It's not in those words, but it's basically like, so did they change everything? And Dale's like, your mom knows. I mean, it's like he kind of immediately knows what they need to hear, even if it's not necessarily what he would say. Well, no, that's not even true. How he responds to them, it's very automatic, right? He responds as a Red, not
Yeah.
as the gold he has become. And so he is able to personify himself for them and also realize that this is exactly what he needs. He needs to be a man of the people again, because he's been that and he's not been that, right? He's maybe it's more that he's tried to be that, but at every turn, him being a gold has taken that ability away from him. And at least in Golden Sun, like when he gives the ships to the low colors, says like, take over, right?
Yeah.
Well, then he has to take it back and be their leader again and be someone they're probably afraid of, whether he wants to be that person or not. And at this point, he doesn't have to be the person anyone is afraid of. And I don't know. There's a really, really, really good quote here. Jonathan, do you have the up on the doc? It's on
Yep, I
the
got it.
bottom of page 18.
I've never been a man of joy or a man of war or an island in a storm. Never an absolute like Lorne. That was what I pretended to be. But I am and always have been a man who is made complete by those around him. I feel strength growing in myself, a strength I haven't felt in so long. It's not only that I am loved, it's that they believe in me. Not the mask, like my soldiers at the Institute. Not the false idol I built in the service of Augustus, but the man beneath. Lycos may be gone, Io may be silent, Mustang a world away, and the sun's on the brink of extinction. But I feel my soul trickling back into me as I realize I am finally home.
He sees his people again.
Yeah, and I mean, it's something he hasn't really had a chance to do since the very beginning of book 1.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. So, at this point, he knows he needs Victra in several ways. Needs her as a
Not that
friend.
way.
Yeah, not
Want to
that
make it clear,
way.
not that way.
Not that way. I don't think Victra would
Why
want
are
that
you?
way.
That's a spoiler, by the way.
I feel like Victra wouldn't want him in that way right now anyway. PTSD.
Still a spoiler in my mind.
PTSD.
They established that the
Yeah.
last book.
But
Yeah.
things change.
They're just friends. PTSD girl does not want a relationship, okay? So he goes to her as a friend. And as we mentioned, he wants to offer her an explanation. But, well, she does not want to be bothered. She's like, skip your explanation. It's like trifling shit. Don't be a trifling bitch, Darrow. Like, this is just trifling shit people muddle through because they're insecure, and he doesn't owe her an explanation. Because, and
You want me
these
to
are.
try this? Or do you...
This
Oh
is a
no,
great
I want to
quote.
read. I want to
Okay,
read
do
some
this, do
Victra.
this. Yeah.
We all enter a certain contract. We all enter a certain social contract by living in this society of ours. My people oppress your kind. We live off the spoils of your labor, pretending you don't exist. And you fight back, usually very poorly. Personally, I think that's your right. It's not good or evil, but it's fair. I'd applaud a mouse that managed to kill an eagle, wouldn't you? Good for it. It's absurd and hypocritical for Golds to complain now simply because the Reds finally started fighting well. And Darrow's like, whoa, what? And Victra's like, dude, it's not my problem. You're more emotional than me. And she insists, don't ask me to be different because you need validation, please. It's beneath both of us. And I think that Darrow's realization that there's no artifice to Victra, no coy manipulation, that she is a wrecking ball. Coming like a wrecking ball. Somebody write that Victra Miley Cyrus parody, please.
I've got so much on my plate already.
I know, my God, you just have 10 more parodies to write. Listen.
Seth, do you do parodies?
Oh, he does.
Yes. Yes, I do.
Yes. We'll learn more about that at Ice on Fire Column this year. Anyway, so she did let her guard down, especially with him, but kind of generally overall before their captivity. Now it is back up, bigger and stronger than ever. I mean, for obvious frickin' reasons, for fuck's sake. Like, first things first, supposedly, and Victor tells Darrow this, supposedly Antonia thought Victor and Darrow were lovers and taunted Victra with the video of Darrow's carving, assuming it would disgust her to see what he was and where he came from and that she'd been lied to. But again, Victra's fucking awesome. And she didn't care. Like, of course she didn't care. She specifically says she cares about what people do, about truth. And she says that if Darrow had told her she wouldn't have done a single thing different, she would have protected him.
I could just see Victor's response to that after the video, just looking up at Antonia and being something like, this is my voice for Victor now. So, he's still more of a man than most Golds I know. Like,
she absolutely had to have given Antonia some snarky ass response, and Antonia was like, let me torture you more.
Yeah.
Which is like, ugh, but also like, not the torture, the Victra just being so staunch and her just not giving a shit. about where you came from. You know, if a mouse killed an eagle, I would applaud. And that kind of, it reminds me of that cartoon with the two eagles sitting with each other, and they were like, oh, like Mr. Mouse says Mr. Owl is an asshole. And the other eagle's like, well, he's never done anything wrong to me.
I've never seen that cartoon.
Oh, I'll have to show it to you. I'll send it to you after this. But yeah, it's I want to know when that cartoon actually came out, because now I'm like, shit, did Pierce like take that line from that cartoon? But the unfortunate thing about this whole exchange is that Victra actually does believe, she knows he told Mustang, and she believes that he didn't tell her because deep down he thinks she's wicked and never trusted her. And I know, obviously we all know, because we talked about this quite a bit throughout our Golden Sun episodes, particularly the latter ones, where Darrow holds her family, or most specifically Antonia, against her, right? And so I think Darrow isn't being entirely truthful with her. I don't necessarily think it's that he didn't trust her specifically. It was that his mind was so wrapped up in how awful her sister was that he couldn't bring himself to open up to Victra.
Well, I mean, but also he didn't tell the butt sucker, right? He didn't tell Severo. Fitchner told Severo. The only person's Darrow.
No, Darrow told Severo. Darrow told Severo.
No, I thought Fitchner told.
No, Darrow told Severo. When Severo brought him the recording in like the middle of Golden Sun.
Okay, all right.
So,
and it took him. Yeah, and then so he's not telling everybody because he's not. It's not that he doesn't trust you because that he thinks that you're evil necessarily. He's not sure how you're going to react because you're a gold.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why did he tell Mustang? Well, he's
because he's in love with her.
Stupid in love with Mustang.
Rightfully so, but also, who isn't stupid in love with Victra? Because I am.
Again, Victor and I disagree on some fairly fundamental things, as we'll see in later books. That I have a healthy respect for her, but I do think some of her attitudes are abhorrent.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But in
not at all.
In this instance, he disagrees with her, or at least with the fact that he didn't tell her because he thinks she's wicked. And I do believe he absolutely doesn't think she's wicked at all. He wants to make amends with her. He believes he owes her a life and owes her justice because she taught him loyalty more than anyone else ever could. And because of that, he believes in her as much as he's ever believed in anyone. And I love this quote. Be my family and I will never forsake you. I will never lie to you. I will be your brother as long as you live. Because again, oh yeah, he wants her to join the Sons of Ares. And he does give her the option, right? He's like, you can leave. I will let you go. I will make sure they let you go. This is the request he made of, or demand he made of Dancer et al. Like, he didn't just say, I'm going to go visit Victra. He was like, I'm going to go visit Victra and I'm going to just give her whatever she wants, basically. But really, what I want her to do is join us. And whatever he says works its magic. Because she's like, yeah, partner, let's go kill some assholes.
I think maybe that was it. It's a version of well, if I fight with you, do I get to kill the English? You know, it's
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely it is. Victor doesn't believe necessarily in the Sons of Ares, in the rising ideals, whatever. But she also doesn't care, right?
yeah,
Like she doesn't give a shit about her family. She doesn't give a shit about her wealth. She kind of never has. Like it's been there, but it's never been something that she has touted or like she's always followed
Yeah. Okay.
Darrow.
Yes,
So,
but it's easier to not care about something when it's always there and you can
oh, for
just
sure.
go back to it.
yeah.
And we'll see, nope, not going to say anything.
Yes, but
You're right. You're right. It's easier to care about things when you know that you can go back or not care, pretend or play at the fact that you don't care about things when you know you can go back to them. But for now, Victra shakes Darrow's hand and agrees to be part of the rising of the Sons of Ares specifically. When she could have just left. That's the other thing. She could have just left. Granted, where would she go is also a question, but she is a Julii, and despite the fact that Antonia is still alive, being the bitch that she is, I do think that Victor probably could have found her way to the right people at the right time and figured her shit out without Darrow's help. But
I
she
don't know about.
also and
I mean, yes and no. I think she'd always be a person on the run. She'd always have to be in the shadows.
I don't think always, but what I do think is that doesn't matter because what she really truly wants, and she says it's revenge, but honestly, I don't think that's what she wants in its entirety. She wants to feel like she's a part of something. And I think she's always kind of wanted that, which is why she followed Darrow and at the Institute, even though like her family way fucking higher than his. Her family is richer than Cassius's family. Richer, I think, even than it doesn't have the political power necessarily that the Augustuses have, but they run like most of the trade in the galaxy that golds can run. So I think that what she wants is just to be a real person, which sounds like a really weak explanation, but I think that's really what it is. She wants to be her own real person. And yes, right now, her own real person is bent on revenge. But as cold as Victra is, there's more to it at this point than that because she really did get shot in the fucking back at the Triumph and crawl across. She didn't just die. She didn't try to escape, right? She didn't crawl toward the exit. She crawled toward Darrow to tell him, I didn't know. Trust me, I didn't know. I don't know. I think that is an important thing to know. Just saying. So, any last thoughts about part 1 of Morningstar?
Well, we're certainly in a better place than at the end of book 2.
Thank God, right?
I mean, look, I just and maybe it's unfair to do this. There's only so many red weddings I can take. There's only so many of them. And then I just have to have a nice lie down and go read some Terry Pratchett.
Or shoot, even Brandon Sanderson.
I mean, well, it
His
depends
stuff's
on
pretty dark too. Have you
I
read
mean-
Elantris?
Yes.
Depends on which one you're reading. What's his name in Stormlight? Caladan?
Oh, yeah, but that's
Yeah,
like
like-
an exploration of
Depression?
Whatever. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, but so far it's turning out well, if you read all 4 books, it's not so bad.
Yes, that's
Also,
true.
there's no red weddings.
Yes.
There's no triumphs.
Yes.
so far.
Yet. Oh God, don't give me that. All right, Jonathan. Any last thoughts on part one?
No, I'm. This was actually, I think, one of my favorite parts of the series to date was these scenes.
Well, as we close out the episode, we just want to give a shout out to our Heroes tier patron, Tommy of the TKOK Podcast Network. Thank you so much for supporting us. Seriously. Once again, I'm Tara, along with fellow host Jonathan and practically permanent guest host Seth. At some point, maybe you'll be like, not that, but for now, I like saying it. So.
Maybe at some point I could be temporary regular host. No,
Don't forget that you can always hit us up at Sagas and Sass on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or YouTube, or email us at sagasandsass@gmail.com with any comments or thoughts you might have. Thank you for joining us for this episode. We will be back on Wednesday, January 18th to cover part 2 of Morningstar. Bye.
Bye.